The spreadsheet on my monitor blurred as my father's text message appeared at the top of my screen. My fingers froze mid-keystroke, hovering over the quarterly report I'd been finalizing. For a fleeting second, warmth flooded my chest. Maybe he was finally acknowledging my promotion after weeks of silence. The message expanded automatically. 5 words materialized in cold, clinical font: "We've chosen to sever contact." Then 8 more that turned my office air to concrete: "Stay away from us forever." My throat constricted as a second notification appeared. My sister Naomi had liked the message that excommunicated me from my family. A bright, cheerful thumbs up beneath the text that severed me from my bloodline. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed to buzz at a higher frequency. My ham sandwich tasted like copper pennies. Without thinking, my fingers moved across the keyboard, typing words that felt simultaneously foreign and inevitable. "I'll remove my name from every loan tomorrow." Send. I silenced the chat, closed my phone, and methodically finished my lunch. The financial spreadsheets on my screen now seemed like a roadmap to something I hadn't realized I'd been planning all along. My name is Olivia, I'm 29 and a financial analyst. This is the story of how I stopped drowning my future to keep my family afloat. I woke before dawn the next morning, my bedroom still draped in shadows. The decision I'd made in that moment of shock had crystallized overnight into something more powerful: intention. Coffee steamed beside me as I assembled what would become my liberation toolkit: notebook, laptop, phone, and a stack of financial documents I'd been storing in a folder labeled Family for years. The banker's voice carried genuine concern when I called at 9 a.m. sharp. "You can't just erase your name from these loans, Ms. Reed," she explained, her tone suggesting this wasn't her first conversation with someone desperate to untangle themselves from financial commitments. "Then tell me what triggers the removal," I replied, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "Refinance or sale?" Her pause told me everything I needed to know. "Either one," she finally admitted. "But without your income as a guarantor, your father likely won't qualify for refinancing." I closed my eyes briefly. "Then the house lists itself." "Next steps, please." By noon, I drafted certified notices for the truck lease. The finance manager had been refreshingly direct: no guarantor, no truck. Simple mathematics. For the first time in years, the equation worked in my favor. I'd never realized how much of myself I'd scattered across my family's financial landscape until I began reclaiming the pieces. My father's mortgage. My mother's kitchen renovation loan, $20,000 borrowed, just until the tax return comes 3 years ago. My sister's car, title, registration, and insurance all bearing my name while she drove it like a birthright. They'd called me selfish when I'd started saying no to new requests 6 months earlier. Ungrateful when I'd mentioned needing space. Vindictive when I'd asked for repayment schedules. But they'd never called me what I was finally becoming: free. If I was banished, my signature would leave with me. 3 days later, I stood on the street where I'd grown up, keys clutched in my palm. The morning sun cast long shadows across the suburban landscape: trimmed hedges, seasonal flags hanging from porches, sprinklers creating rainbow mists on emerald lawns. I'd timed my arrival precisely. My father would be at the construction site. My mother at her retail job. And Naomi, my sister who'd given a thumbs up to my exile, would be starting her shift at the coffee shop downtown. Her white sedan gleamed in the driveway like an invitation. The car I'd co-signed for, made down payments on, and covered insurance for when she'd been between jobs for 14 months. I approached it steadily, inserted the key I'd never surrendered, and slid into the driver's seat. The interior smelled like artificial vanilla and stale French fries. Glitter sparkled in the floor mats, ground into the fabric like tiny broken promises. Fast food wrappers spilled from the door pockets. The gas tank registered nearly empty, of course. The engine started on the first turn. No one saw me back out of the driveway. No one witnessed me reclaiming what had always legally been mine. Yet adrenaline coursed through my veins like I was committing a heist rather than exercising ownership. At my apartment, I parked the car in my designated spot and stared at it through the windshield. I'd spent $17,000 on this vehicle over 2 years: payments, insurance, maintenance, gas, when Naomi was tight this month. Now it sat before me, simultaneously a victory and a reminder of how much I'd surrendered before fighting back. I sent one message to the family chat: vehicle recovered. Naomi can arrange other transportation. Then I silenced the thread, went for a long run, and showered away the morning's tension. By late afternoon that same day, my phone had become a beacon of digital outrage. Hundreds of messages. Dozens of missed calls. Voicemails that started with sobs and escalated to threats. My mother crying about family loyalty. My father promising legal consequences. Naomi broadcasting her abandonment to every social platform we shared. The extended family joined the chorus predictably. Uncle Thomas sending scripture about forgiveness. Aunt Leslie offering to mediate. Cousin David sharing articles about narcissistic personality disorder with not-so-subtle hints about who exemplified the symptoms. I placed the car keys on my kitchen counter and opened my evidence folder. Every document meticulously organized, loan agreements, payment records, text messages agreeing to repayment terms never fulfilled. I photographed each page, saved digital copies to 2 separate drives, and emailed myself a compressed archive. If a single moment of doubt crept in about whether I was overreacting, the evidence silenced it instantly. My father's promised legal threat arrived via email that evening, a photo of attorney letterhead without an actual letter. "Expect consequences," he wrote, as if I hadn't been living with the consequences of their financial dependency for years. I forwarded the email to Rachel, my college roommate who'd become a contracts attorney. Her response came 6 minutes later: "Bluff. Keep your documentation immaculate." That evening, my grandmother Catherine called. She'd always stood slightly apart from the family drama, observing more than engaging, her quiet wisdom offered only when solicited. She had my personal cell number that I'd given her years ago, a number my parents never used, preferring the family group chat for everything. "I've heard their version," she said, her voice carrying the slight tremor of her 82 years. "Now I'd like to hear yours." For the first time, I told someone everything: the years of loans that were never loans but gifts, the promises of repayment that evaporated like morning dew, the guilt deployed like precision weapons whenever I hesitated to open my wallet or sign my name. When I finished, silence filled the line for several heavy seconds. "When your mother was young," she finally said, "she borrowed $5,000 from your grandfather and me. Never paid it back. Said she thought it was a gift." Another pause stretched between us. "Some people think love means endless rescue," she continued. "You're right to stop drowning for them." Her voice wavered slightly before regaining its strength. "You remind me of your grandfather. He believed in earning your peace." When the call ended, I sat in my darkened living room, the car keys cool against my palm. Freedom didn't feel triumphant or victorious. It felt clean, like air after a storm has passed. Sometimes taking back what's yours looks like betrayal until you remember who betrayed first. The digital assault intensified over the following days. My mother left voicemails that braided guilt with scripture. My father's texts alternated between threats and attempts at manipulation. But it was Naomi who escalated to public warfare, posting a note titled "My Truth" that painted me as jealous, controlling, and vindictive. Her friends rallied with heart emojis and supportive comments. A former coworker of mine commented cautiously, "Didn't Olivia pay for that car?" The comment vanished within minutes. So did her connection to my sister's account. I didn't engage. I documented everything in my evidence folder, then locked my social accounts, changed passwords, and turned off read receipts. While they broadcast their narrative of victimhood, I maintained my record of truth, dates, amounts, signatures, contracts. My father's next escalation came via courier, a small envelope containing a typed demand to return the vehicle immediately, threats bolded throughout. No signatures, of course. Nothing that would hold up in any legal forum. I smiled without humor as I emailed my response, 3 lines with attachments. Title attached. Insurance documentation attached. Your move. Rachel texted a thumbs up when I forwarded her the exchange. "One more thing," she added. "Start a written log. Every contact, every threat, every expense." I opened a fresh document that evening and began the record that would become my spine, straight, supportive, and unbreakable. The family chat continued to burn with righteous indignation. Uncle Thomas proposed mediation through his church. Aunt Leslie organized a prayer chain for my troubled spirit. Cousin David sent links to sermon videos about honoring thy father and mother. I muted his number permanently and stood by my window, watching the city move below, unbothered by my small drama. Somewhere a siren passed and faded. My life felt contained now, not empty but measured. I turned off every notification, set my phone face down, and slept without dreaming of drowning for the first time in months. The house hit the market in June, precisely as the bank had warned it would when my father failed to qualify for refinancing twice. I signed the listing documents digitally and declined to be present for any showings. Real estate agents staged fruit bowls and white towels where family photos had once hung. An offer arrived after 6 showings. Good school district. Clean inspection. Closing in 30 days. At the virtual signing, I kept my camera off and my voice neutral. Wire confirmation landed in my inbox that afternoon. After the mortgage and fees, equity remained, my portion $20,000 for the years I'd helped carry a house I never lived in as an adult. My father texted one line after the funds transferred, "You're a vulture." I archived it for my records and moved on. The truck lease resolved itself when the dealership demanded a new guarantor or return. He found a coworker willing to co-sign, someone new to rescue him. I mailed my release letter anyway. File updated. Liability removed. Naomi's car remained in my assigned parking spot, insurance changed to my name only, new plates registered. No more glitter ground into the mats. No more empty gas tank. Maintenance performed on schedule, finally. After 2 months, I sold it for $12,000, much less than I'd put into it, but it was closure that mattered more than recouping every dollar. I used the funds to pad my emergency savings and finally severed that financial tie completely. My mother's kitchen loan continued to weigh on my credit, $20,000 borrowed in my name, only 3 payments made by her before the excuses began. I'd stopped paying in January, allowing my credit score to absorb the impact. Collections called in July, the balance swollen with fees and interest to $23,000. I negotiated a settlement, $5,000 single payment deletion in writing. They agreed quickly, recognizing something in my voice that suggested this was the best offer they would receive. I paid and filed their confirmation letter. The mathematics were simple, $9,000 already paid before I stopped. $5,000 to settle. $14,000 on a $20,000 loan I never wanted. A wound closed with a scar but closed nonetheless. At work, my focus sharpened. I stayed late for deliverables, not disasters. I mentored new hires without feeling drained. My manager scheduled a one-on-one meeting 6 weeks after the text. "You've stepped up," she observed. "Clients are asking for you by name. There's a promotion coming in 3 months, senior title, 15% raise." I thanked her and immediately adjusted my budget to route the difference directly to savings. The financial buffer I'd never had while serving as my family's emergency fund began to grow. Naomi's social media presence grew, increasingly desperate as her audience tired of the same narrative. Posts about toxic people and screenshots of devotionals appeared between sponsored content for the multi-level marketing scheme she joined. The former coworker tried commenting again, this time more directly, "Didn't your sister pay for everything you own?" The comment disappeared. So did the account. I didn't chase their narrative online. I maintained mine on paper, dates, amounts, outcomes, next steps. Reality doesn't require an audience to remain true. In August, about 4 months after reclaiming the car, I received a formal letter from a local attorney regarding my father's legal threat. It stated simply that after reviewing the documentation, they had advised my father no legal action was viable given the clear ownership evidence. The case was closed. Another potential storm weathered without a drop of rain. Grandmother Catherine visited in August, arriving with a small suitcase, a firm hug, and clear eyes that missed nothing. She'd called a week earlier to arrange the visit, explaining she'd taken a cab from the train station rather than ask my parents for a ride. "She brought a card containing a check for your buffer," she explained. "Not your burden." We ate lunch by my apartment window, talking about my work, my recently begun condo search, the pottery class I'd started taking on Wednesday evenings. I answered without flinching, no longer measuring my success against their expectations. On her way out, she paused at the door, her hand light on my arm. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "Not for fighting back. For stopping the rescue." That night, I opened the county records website and found what I'd suspected was coming, bankruptcy filings with familiar names. A friend who worked at the courthouse had mentioned seeing the filing during lunch earlier that week. They had chosen consequences over change, as was their right. I closed the tab and breathed slowly, recognizing that I wasn't their insurer anymore. Not their understudy. Not their emergency fund. I washed my dishes and wiped the counter. My apartment stayed tidy and quiet. Bills paid. Calendar manageable. Inbox under control. Freedom looked remarkably like an ordinary Tuesday. They wanted my credit. I kept my future. I toured condos that autumn with a steady heartbeat, no one else on the paperwork or in my ear questioning my choices. A one-bedroom unit faced a small park, morning light streaming through tall windows that made the space feel larger than its square footage. The lender approved my application quickly, clean history, clear boundaries, stable income. On closing day, I signed a loan bearing only my name on every page. The keys landed in my palm, not heavy with obligation but light with possibility. I moved with help from actual friends, people who showed up with pizza and blankets and jokes about adulthood without keeping score. We built shelves and laughed easily, the sound filling rooms that had never known my family's particular tension. Grandmother Catherine visited the following weekend, her small suitcase now accompanied by a larger smile. She brought homemade soup and family stories I'd never heard, tales of my grandfather's quiet determination, of gardens planted and tended, of small kindnesses given freely rather than coerced. "I've updated my will," she mentioned casually over tea. "Your mother gets modest help. You get the rest." I started to protest, the old reflex of carrying more than my share. She raised a hand, gentle but firm. "Learn to receive care without arguing it away, Olivia." Work remained steady, not frantic. Deadlines met. Weekends reclaimed for myself. I bought a used bicycle and joined a Saturday morning riding group. I kept my Thursday therapy appointments, where we named losses without dramatics and practiced finding joy in ordinary moments. Sometimes I reread my father's message, "Stay away from us forever." It doesn't burn anymore. It glows like an exit sign, marking the way towards something better. Naomi kept posting. I stopped checking. Narratives need audiences to survive, and mine had moved elsewhere. At dusk, I walked the park loop near my new home. Children rode bikes along the path. The evening air carried the scent of cut grass and someone's backyard grill. My phone pinged with a text from someone new, kind, patient, unconnected to my past. "Dinner Saturday?" I replied yes, without calculating what I might need to sacrifice in return. I liked the version of me answering, the one who recognized the difference between generosity and self-destruction. That night, I opened my balcony door and listened to the city sounds blend with summer air. I watered plants that finally thrived in my care. Peace wasn't a ceremony with witnesses and applause. It was a daily practice, bills set to auto-pay, phone on silent, doors locked, windows open to fresh air. If you've chosen boundaries over approval, I'm proud of you. Tell me what you kept and what you finally released. I removed my name from their loans and from their expectations. And found myself in the space that remained.